What's up, everybody? Welcome into the show tonight. Let me double check that I got my audio going. This is 2 times in a row. Unacceptable. Trying to tweet while I get this going. All right, we're good on the audio. Welcome in, everybody. Tonight, we got a little bit of a bombshell, a curveball dropped on the college sports world before getting ready to do the show tonight. Right about the same time I was starting to really prep this thing out. We got a story dropped in The Athletic about a super league. And this is not just a super league that is, some guy on Twitter with 10 followers is like, hey, here's the plan that I would use. And we would go with the relegation model and all of that. No, this is a legitimate group of leaders in college athletics, including Gordon G., the president at West Virginia. He is a part of this. Legitimate college leaders, including many presidents, that are trying to put together something that would fix college football. And quite frankly, we hear Super League typically and kind of recoil, especially those of us that are Big 12 fans and are like, hey, I don't know about this. Like, that's not something that we really want to see, because the Super League, you get nervous. Do you make the cut? Do you not? How many teams in the conference would make the cut? This one would be very all-inclusive. If you're in the top 80, basically, the top 80 teams in college athletics, if you were in one of the Power 5 conferences before the Pac-12 broke up, you would be in this Super League and you would not be able to get relegated. But there would be a form of promotion and relegation involved in all of this. It's honestly a pretty damn good proposal. And because of that, it means that there's not a chance in hell that we will ever see it enacted, because anything that seems to make sense with college football and college athletics these days means it's not going to work out, because we have to have it be as stupid and inequitable and TV driven and money driven as possible. But they tried to make some concessions with it. They're trying to meet with different conferences. So far, they've really only been successful with one. And the Big 12 is actually one of the leagues that they have not successfully met with yet. But now they seem to be going to the media to try and get the word out about this thing and hopefully get the attention of the fans, get some more people behind it and see what happens. So it's enough that, I mean, we could spend most of the show talking about this tonight, and maybe we will. That's going to be a huge, huge part of it as I work my way through all the details about this proposal as told to Stuart Mandel, old friend, but Andrew Marchand as well, sports business reporter who is now with The Athletic and is just excellent. He was involved in this as well, which I really, really like and appreciate his work. So I'm excited to delve into it, man. It's kind of energized me a little bit. I was like, hey, at least there's a tiny little inkling of hope. Like, now that there are some people working towards something good in college athletics right now, at least attempting to do something other than just spiral into this ball of like late stage capitalism college football that we're in right now. So I'll give it to you in all of its detail, man. I will. And I see Al points out that the ACC board of directors did meet with this group. So yes, the ACC is the one league that has met with this group about it so far. But this is where I think public pressure maybe can force some of the other leagues to actually get involved here and do a little something about it. And public pressure could make the leagues actually take the meetings, gather more momentum. I think it's probably going to have to be like a snowball effect. Now, this would involve some private equity, which I know is another thing everybody sort of recoils at. And you do kind of have to just trust, I guess, in this proposal that private equity wouldn't eventually totally ruin it either. But there's so much good that's in this. I can't wait to read it all to you guys. Honestly, the other stuff that I had for tonight was going to be talking about Brett Yormark's interview on 365 Sports and some of the quotes from Brett Yormark, because it was excellent, man. It was excellent. Do I still have it pulled up? I do. I still have it pulled up. So I will even, you know what? This is against everything that I should do, but I'm going to put it in the chat. You should all go watch it if you haven't. I'm guessing many of you have. But just store it in a different tab and wait until we're done with the live show and then watch the Brett Yormark interview. If you have not already, it was great from 365 Sports. And I singled out a lot of the quotes and thoughts from Brett Yormark because I thought he was great. He was great and gave you a little bit more insight, like was a little bit more candid than I thought he would be when talking about the dynamics at play right now of the new college football playoff and the new revenue splits and where the Big 12 sits and what he wants to do with the NCAA tournament. There is a lot to chew on from that Brett Yormark interview. So we can certainly do that as well. But you guys know you can be a big part of the show. You can direct where we go on the show tonight. You can be a big part of the content that we are doing here. You can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box to attach a donation to your chat. It will make it a super chat, pins it in a separate column for me, and ensures that you get on the show tonight. It is a way to let your voice be heard, control where we're going on the show, and support the work that I'm doing here on this channel to bring you Big 12 conference realignment, college football content on a regular basis. Very much appreciate all of you guys who do it. I could not do it without your support. So thank you, everybody who does support me that way. No worries if not, though. All it takes is just one click, one like, totally free to also support the channel. If you just like the video, that is a huge help with the YouTube algorithm as well. And if you leave a comment in the comment section of the video, that really helps spin that algorithm as well. So let me know what you think of the Super League. This one's pretty simple. Are you for the Super League? Are you against it? Are you totally hopeless that anything like this would ever happen? Let me know what you think in the comments section of the video. And if you are catching up to this after the fact, you are not watching it live, it is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you'd like to support the channel that way and leave your question or comment that way, and I will read it at the beginning of the next show if you do that. I was like double checking there. Did I have a Venmo? Didn't have one. So if you do that, though, like I have done on the previous couple of shows, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, leave your question or comment there. I will get to it to start the next show. Okay, with the groundwork laid, let's dive into it, man. Again, this story comes from The Athletic. Stuart Mandel, Andrew Marchand, one college football reporter, one sports business reporter, come together for this story. We know how much trouble the sport is in. It is an existential crisis, as this group calls it. Could not agree more. We are very much there with college athletics right now. This is something that could really help a lot, and I think help the long-term health of the sport, even for the big boys who are going for the short-term paycheck right now. But I start with the article. It says, one league overseeing college football's highest level. No more conferences as we've known them. Playoff berths being decided solely on the field. Promotion and relegation for smaller schools. Players being paid directly. NIL and the transfer portal managed. Doesn't that sound, I mean, that opening paragraph, boy, that's a hell of a lead, because that's like every problem that is facing the sport right now just solved and laid out in a way that kind of solves everything. One league overseeing college football's highest level. One big governing body. That's been a complaint for a long time. Like, no one has ever been just looking out for the good of the entire entity. The NCAA has never really exactly done that. We haven't had like a college football commissioner. One league overseeing the highest level of college football. No more conferences. Don't have to worry about conference realignment. You can keep it more geographical, stuff that is more sensical, keep rivalries together. Playoff berths being decided solely on the field. No more worrying about who the AP poll is going to vote. No more worrying about what the BCS computers are going to chunk out there. No more worrying about what the college football playoff selection committee is going to do, and if it's Baylor or TCU or Ohio State or whatever. None of that. Players being paid directly, being able to collectively bargain with players, and then able to manage NIL in the transfer portal, because then in this scenario, you'd be able to like have contracts. So there would be at least some level of order to all of this. It says a group of influential leaders wants to make all this happen soon, and they are pitching it as the best way forward for a sport they believe needs saving. I understand in the Big Ten of the SEC, I suppose you would say, nothing needs saving. We've got all the power. This is great. They have to realize in their heart of hearts, like long term, this is not the way. The sport definitely does need some saving. I think if you have any kind of a brain as a college football fan right now, that would have to be the sinking feeling in your gut, even if you do like where this positions your school and your league personally. Several college presidents, Roger Goodell's primary. Okay, so here's the group. Here is the group of people that have come up with this plan. It is a group of several college presidents, Roger Goodell's primary lieutenant at the NFL, and some of sports top executives. They've all come together and they've devised this plan, which has been dubbed by outsiders as a super league to completely transform college football. This is a group called College Sports Tomorrow. Says, although the plan has drawn skepticism from within the sport's current institutions, the people behind the ideas believe they must be implemented. The current College Sports Tomorrow outline would create a system that would have, all right, here you go. You ready for this? It would have the top 70 programs, all members of the 5 former major conferences, which would mean we'd be doing right by Oregon State and Washington State in this. All members of the 5 former major conferences, plus Notre Dame and new ACC member SMU. So SMU snuck in. What we always talk about buzzer beaters at the end of the show, right? It would be a buzzer beater for SMU. They get in. They would all be permanent members of this top 70. And the league would still encompass all 130 plus FBS universities. They, though, would be playing in that relegation promotion area of this, where teams could get relegated and promoted. So the perpetual members, the 70 programs, that would be in 7 10-team divisions, joined by an 8th division of teams that would be promoted from the second tier. So you'd have 80 teams, and you'd have 70 teams that all stay, and they're the teams from what we have known as the Power 5 conferences. And then you would have 10 teams that are best of the rest, and that's where relegation and promotion would happen. I mean, this sounds great and just like wildly entertaining. Like, who's not going to be watching this, man? Who is not going to be watching this? God, I mean, I get excited thinking about it. Anyway, the 50 plus second division teams would have the opportunity to compete their way into the upper division, creating a promotion system similar to the structure in European football leagues. The 70 permanent teams would never be in danger of moving down, while the second division would have the incentive of promotion and relegation. Like, let's stop it right there. Like, you'd be watching that. People would be watching that. And I see Mr. Bundy in the comments down there. Sounds like communism. Like, I mean, okay, I suppose, but this is still going to make a ton of money. People would still watch the hell out of this, and this would long-term keep the interest in the sport from everybody, from the entire country. To me, there's no argument. There's no argument that this would maintain more interest from the entire body of people that pay attention to the sport and create a much more healthy long-term future for the sport. I seriously do not think there's an argument for that at all. The argument is going to be, well, it's complicated. Well, the Big Ten and the SEC would never relinquish their power. But in terms of what would be objectively better for the sport and objectively better for the interest of the sport, the national interest of the sport, and I would still tell you the long-term finances of the sport for everybody, instead of just sucking the life out of it, like squeezing everything that you can out of it now, and then you just have this dry thing, it would be much more like just little bit, just steady. Don't overkill it and ruin it. It would just be steady for everybody, man. And then even the smaller leagues being able to do relegation and promotion, like the relegation and promotion aspect of it would make it wildly fascinating to watch. I mean, you're talking about like cranking up viewership for the lesser teams here, for the best of the rest teams. Like, if you know what's on the line is relegation and promotion, how many people are going to be tuning in to watch those games? Like, we love stakes. Games need stakes. We don't care about Furman until they're in the NCAA tournament. When they're in the NCAA tournament and there are major stakes there, then all of a sudden we care and we are watching. Like, stakes, man. Stakes is what we need, and that gives more stakes to more games. I really like it. I really, really like it. So that's the basis. That's the basis of it. The playoffs would not require, and by the way, everybody's saying communism. The revenue is not distributed equally. The revenue is not distributed equally. I repeat, I will get to that later on in the article, but the revenue is not distributed equally. The playoffs would not require a selection committee, as the 8 division winners. So here's how you do your postseason. The 8 division winners and 8 wild cards from the top tier would go to the postseason. The wild card spots would be determined by record and tiebreakers, much like the NFL. And college football has always been very stupid with the way that it's done the postseason, and that there's so much subjectivity to it. This would make it much more objective. There is so much subjectivity to how we've always done a college football postseason. This would take all of that out. And look, there is a part of the sport and a part of what is endearing about it is that there is that, and that is some of the charm. You have the big brands and they're always getting preferential treatment, and that creates the arguments. The situations like Florida State last year create just crazy amounts of arguments for everybody in the sport, and that is a part of it. Like it or not, that is a part of it. This would take some of that out, but that seems just very easy and sensical for everybody. No worrying about the Big Ten or the SEC getting their conference champions getting an automatic bye. Nobody has to fight about that. You go win your division, or you get a wild card spot. That's how they do it in the NFL. Seems to work fine. People seem to like that. There's not a lot of complaining about that. And I don't understand why anyone would frown on that being the way that it would work here in your college football super league. College Sports Tomorrow borrows ideas from leagues like the NFL, Premier League, and MLS to create a system that they believe would bring more television value and sustainability. Not coincidentally, some of its most influential members have direct ties to those leagues. I mean, look, clearly what the NFL is doing is working. The Premier League is wildly, wildly popular overseas. And, MLS has become much more popular in my lifetime as well. That seems like a smart idea to get people in from sports where the structure is really working and they are not in an existential crisis, to help you through your existential crisis here with some ideas. Thus far, so that's kind of the basic idea. But thus far, it says the group is struggling to gain traction with the schools that would play in their proposed Super League. The ACC Board of Directors heard a presentation from the group in February. Now, it is not surprising that you would have said it's either the ACC or the Big 12 that would listen to this thing first. And who is in the worst position of anybody in college sports right now? It is the ACC, because the ACC is the league that is, well, they did get a little bit more playoff money. They're on the verge of collapsing. They're getting sued by two schools. North Carolina may not be very far behind. Greg Pflugar had some great information about that this week. But North Carolina may not be too far behind in the lawsuit thing. So when you're literally at war in the courts with two of your constituents, not a great sign for the long-term health of the league. The ACC is in the roughest spot. They would be the ones most likely to say, like, hey, bring us in. Bring us in. Bring us into this. Get us into stable ground. Like, it would ensure that, like, all of our schools are going to be okay. And I see, I know people will complain, like 70 is too many teams, but like, you do need teams. Another part of the problem here, and when we talk about like what we have typically thought of as the Super League and what it would be if it's going to be the top like 20, 25 consolidated brands, you're going to have so many fan bases that are pissed off and unhappy because somebody has to lose. Like, somebody has to lose those games. You're not going to have all of those programs winning 10 games every single year. Somebody has to lose the games, which means proud fan bases that are used to winning a bunch of games are going to be really unhappy. And that's going to dwindle some of their interest in it. So what do you need? I'm not like a wrestling guy, really, but I worked with enough people who were obsessed with wrestling that I learned the term jobber over the years. You need some jobbers. You need some jobbers. Like, you need some teams out there to lose games that are not going to be the top brands. And then they in turn get the extra carrot of like, hey, you've got a shot. You're in the league. You do have a chance. But you need some of the Boston colleges of the world to go out and lose games. Like, you need the Indianas of the world to go out and lose games. That's basically, I mean, look, the Big Ten right now has a bunch of jobbers and that's one of my real frustrations. Like, all of James Franklin ever does is just beat up on the jobbers, lose to the big boys, wipe his hands of it and head to the Peach Bowl. You're going to need some of that if you do this, or else you're going to have a lot of fan bases that are unhappy. So that's another thing that this really does address, is that you have some of those teams there built in. And that's why you would go to 70 with this. So I'm trying to read the feedback in the chat here. This is a topic that I am curious what you guys think and what the feedback actually is on this. Again, click the $ below the chat box if you want to weigh in and ensure you get on the show. But I am reading to watch what some of the reaction is going to be here. But if you're thinking if that's that, it's a ridiculous argument to say that you need 70 teams because you need teams to lose. Okay, give it 5 years, man. Give it 5 years. Give it 5 years in what a super league would be, and come back to me and let me know how these teams are feeling. A lot of people around here like poke fun kind of at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to be the next Nebraska. They're going to lose too many games. Look at Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska's not even dealing with the super league. They're losing to the jobbers, but they start losing all these games. People get real upset. People get really, really upset. So if you start having the Oklahomas of the world losing 5 or 6 games every year because they're playing all these elite brands all of the time, they're going to have a lot of unhappy people. It's not going to be the same climate and environment as it is today. It is not a ridiculous argument at all. Okay. So we got the playoffs, 8 wild cards, 8 automatic qualifiers. Thus far, the group is struggling to gain traction with the schools that would play in the proposed Super League. The ACC Board of Directors heard a presentation from the group in February. However, planned dinners with administrators from the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12 all were called off. Planned dinners with administrators from the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12 all were called off. And obviously, the only one there that is really surprising is the Big 12. You would figure the Big Ten or the SEC are not going to have a lot of interest in this. I don't really know what the actual path is to getting them to not even like acquiesce and sign on the dotted line here, but to even give this like a legitimate meeting, to be able to get this on Sankey's schedule, like to be able to get this through to his secretary to actually have it pull up as a Google Calendar event or an Outlook calendar event for Greg Sankey on his schedule. That's going to be a tough putt. Spokespersons for the Big Ten and the SEC said Commissioners Petitti and Greg Sankey, respectively, have not met with Perna's group. Yeah, long shot. But I am surprised about the Big 12. I am surprised about the Big 12 there. Now, the Big 12 is not in as poor a position as the ACC, obviously, here, but the Big 12 is still been relegated in a way itself, although Brett Yormark doesn't totally see it that way. And I'll try to get to some of his quotes on that from the 365 interview. But you have been relegated in some way. This is something as a Big 12 fan, I'm saying, I'm like, please take the meeting. Take the meeting. See if we can try and get this thing moving a little bit further down the tracks. Leagues have been hesitant and canceled meetings so as not to upset their current broadcast partners, including ESPN and Fox, according to one executive briefed on the commissioner's thoughts. And therein probably lies the real rub. If you're the Big 12, you got this deal with ESPN and Fox. You feel great about getting that deal. It ensured basically your survival over the Pac-12. You don't want to bite the hand that feeds. You are kind of in a bit of a catch-22 and stuck there a little bit. Don't bite the hand that feeds, which is ESPN and Fox right now in this college football world. So that has to be something I'm sure that is weighing on Brett Yormark's mind there. He's very cognizant of this. He's a guy that has TV connections, knows a lot about that world. That makes sense. That makes sense. And if you're the ACC, again, what's their situation? Well, they're mired in these lawsuits where ESPN has now become unglued and is very upset with Florida State. It just got thrown out there, the dirty laundry, that ESPN actually has the option to cut off the deal in 2027. So, ESPN's already kind of a mess there. Like, what are you really going to mess up? You're in lawsuits. ESPN's already mad at one of the teams trying to get out of your league. Their secrets are kind of being exposed. There's less to lose by perturbing a TV network there for the ACC right now, I would think. Chief among the obstacles this new venture faces are the billions of dollars in TV deals that all the top conferences have locked in with the major networks. ESPN, ABC, Fox, NBC, and CBS. The FBS conference has recently signed off on a 6-year, $7.8 billion extension with ESPN for the exclusive rights to the expanded college football playoff. So it is the combination of, TV networks like the setup because the TV networks are going to get more of the bigger brands in the Big Ten and the SEC, and the schools and the conferences like the setups because they're getting more money. I mean, it's pretty simple economics to parse out there and how it is that we are where we are, and why those would be such big obstacles for this to happen. Why would any of the TV networks or the Big Ten or the SEC, any of those parties, give up their power right now? They have a ton of power. They're controlling everything. Why would they give that up for the good of the sport? That's what you would be asking them to do with this. Even though I'm trying to see how much further down it is in the story, it does talk about the revenue not being split evenly. So you would still, that's kind of the concession here to the Big Ten and the SEC, is that bigger brands would still get more of the money, but you're not going to have as much power, relatively speaking, as you do right now, where you just have everybody bent over a barrel. How many times in history has somebody that legitimately has all of the power just given it up for the sake of the greater good? We don't see that a whole lot. You don't expect to see that happening a whole lot. So that's the issue. It points out the Big Ten's deal runs through the 2029-30 season. The Big 12's runs through 2030-31. And the SEC's exclusive deal with ESPN runs through 2033-34. One TV exec called the idea that there is a lot more untapped money in the market naive. One College Sports Tomorrow executive said that the major networks with existing deals would likely need to buy into the plan before it could go to the open market in the 2030s. So, okay, if it's a more long-term project here, I guess the idea would be, sorry, I'm laughing at Nebraska's a jobber. Yes, Nebraska is now a jobber. That is what Nebraska is. Nebraska is 100% a jobber. The major networks with existing deals would likely need to buy into the plan before it could go into the open market in the 2030s. So long-term play here, say, look, don't sign anything else. Let's take some time to make sure this is perfect and get everybody happy and on board. And then at that point, we dive in and do this. We get the TV networks involved. We dive in and do this. So this is nothing that would change like tomorrow. And who knows how the tectonic plates of college athletics would shift between now and 2030, even if that was the ultimate idea and the ultimate goal, right? So there's a lot that would have to go right for any of this to ever even get close to happening. But I'm at least happy to see that somebody is out here trying to do something. And I'm not all the way through this article yet, but I've seen the super chats coming in, so I want to make sure that I do address those. Let's see. David, what's up, David? David, thank you for your support of the channel. As always, my friend, great to see you tonight. David says, Tom and Jerry sound effect. Don't you believe it? This plan, what does it change? Well, this plan would this plan would change a lot. I mean, this plan would much more. I mean, I feel like I kind of addressed that at the beginning, but to me, the plan, it does create a more equitable playing field for everybody. There's no getting around that. It would untilt the scales a little bit from some of the biggest brands, but still, again, with the revenue, if the revenue is going to be still slanted up toward the Texas and Alabamas of the world, they're still going to have their advantages. So in some respects, it feels to me like it would kind of be going back to maybe like a 2000 and like mid 2000s kind of landscape where you have those Power 5 conferences still in their positions of relative power, and the bigger brands in there still are above everybody else. They have more money for the facilities. They have more resources. It's easier to recruit there. Like, they still have some advantages, but it's not this crazy, like, hey, now you're going to have to be paying players. Money is more important than ever. And you've got two leagues making twice as much as the next crop of leagues. It would take away some of that. And because of that, to me, put it on a better long-term path for the future. It would create something that would be much more beneficial for the overall health and longevity of the sport. That to me is what it changes. David follows up with can play win games in the non-con schedule. Yeah, and I would imagine, scheduling is an interesting question. How would that work? Do you still have like autonomy to schedule your own non-conference games? I didn't actually see that part addressed there, but I would think so, because their plan, again, is supposed to encompass all 130 plus current FBS schools. So I would think you would still have the agency to go schedule your non-conference games as much as you would want to. But I see you're saying You're okay. I know. Okay, David, I got you. I see where you're coming from. You are responding to, I believe, at the time when I was talking about a reason for this, including 70 teams, is that you do need some teams to lose the games. I mean, you can schedule 3 games, but we're talking the SEC is going to go to a 9-game conference schedule. Thank you, CDC, Chris Del Conte, for spilling the beans on that. The SEC is going to go to a 9-game conference schedule here at one point in time. So you could schedule up 3 wins, I suppose. But if you're still going to go 5-4 in your conference, is Oklahoma going to be cool with 8-4? Is USC going to be cool with 7-5? Like, I don't. You're still going to have a lot of fan bases that would be upset by that think that, hey, we're going to be in the playoff every year because we are Oklahoma, we're USC, and that's just what we do. But if you're now playing much more difficult games on that schedule more often, and this is really, we're talking like super, it's not even the current landscape. This is like Super League, consolidate your power. So it's literally only the top 25 to 30 brands. So like every single week, you will be playing one of those big brand teams. I still think that's I would disagree with you on that, David. I still think that's a little short-sighted to say, hey, you could just schedule the 3 wins in the non-con and everything would be fine. I don't think it would be, because there will still be enough league games, enough league inventory of games that people are going to have to lose there. But my apologies for I didn't grasp onto when that comment came in. I believe that is what you were responding to with the comment at the time. But hey, we can agree to disagree, David. I very much appreciate the feedback and the support of the channel, as always, my friend. And thank you for being here tonight on the show. Cat fan in Huskerland, aka Daniel Osborne. What's up, my guy? Thank you for being here, Daniel, and thank you for your support of the channel, as always. Daniel says, sounds like a good plan. I have always said college sports needs to have a less controversial way to pick teams to play in the postseason tournaments, and this plan seems to get rid of the controversy. Yeah, I mean, one of the many problems that college sports has always had, and this goes back to, we split national champions. Like, what? Why? Like, why was college football the only sport where that could happen? And I will admit, even as much as that typically does not benefit the school that I root for or schools of that ilk, because they're not a big, powerful brand, there is some level of like, well, that is kind of the charm, colloquialism, whatever you want to call it, of college football. There is a part of that. I will admit there is a part of that. That's kind of what makes it unique. So you would be losing that a little bit, but if we're talking about just the most fair way to do it, not skewing things for brands just to skew things for brands, that's really the way that it should be done. So yeah, I think a lot of college football fans would really, really be on board with that. So I'm with you, Daniel. I would be very much in favor of that, and that would also kind of expose some people a little bit, where it's like, if you're really that, you're just trying to do that, like, you just want the bigger brands to be winning all the time because of their brands, to get the edge because of their brands. They shouldn't have to earn it, like, especially like college football communism. Well, no, this is telling you in your postseason, you got to go like legitimately earn it as much as you can possibly earn it. No handouts here, no college football playoff food stamps to be handing out here. That part of it, I would think everybody could get on board with. Anyway, I appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you for being here, my friend. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Glenn, great to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Glenn says, what if this Super League was to go ahead, without the 2 power hungry leagues? With all the other colleges, there should be enough to make it work. Interesting idea. So if the Big Ten and the SEC say, hey, we're not going to agree to this, then in 2030, when your TV contracts are getting ready to come up, you would just say, hey, well, I guess, God, I'm trying to think, why am I not? The ACC TV deal, that's a real problem there. And the ACC is probably not going to last until then. But if you could, at that point, consolidate the TV stuff for everybody else, I don't know how much money would be in it, but maybe that is an option. Perhaps something like this is what the quote unquote lower level or second level of college football would look like. And that could create some real intrigue. And that is kind of something that people have laid out before. I think John Wilner, who has kind of prognosticated on some of the future of this with some columns that he's written, and even like futuristic columns, as in like this is what it will look. I'm writing from the future right now, has kind of predicted something more like that, where it's like Super League will exist, it'll do its thing, and then you'll have the rest coming back to geographic leagues that they would be playing in, and something that would look more like this. So I think that's very much a possibility. I do think in the long term here, that is very much a possibility, Glenn. So I think it's a good thought. I think it's definitely a good thought. Cyclone Steve, what's up, Cyclone Steve? Great to hear from you. Cyclone Steve, hey, all right. Cyclone Steve says George Washington gave up power for the greater good. All right, hey, I challenge you to come up with an example. You came up with an example. We just need Greg Sankey to be George Washington. That's all. That's all we need to save the sport. We need Greg Sankey to be George Washington. So if we can get that, if we can accomplish that, do we think that Greg Sankey will have the humility in him that George Washington did? I mean, I can't even say the damn sentence without laughing. Tony Petitti, I guess, maybe, I don't know. I haven't known Petitti as long to like work up a narrative in my head of like who he is or what he is. He's not as much a villainous character as Greg Sankey is right now. So it's a little tougher. It's a little tougher for me to get there with him. But yeah, I don't know that we're going to see Sankey there, man. I don't know that we're going to see Sankey there. David, what's up, David? David says, not worried about antitrust lawsuits. There's already multiple divisions in college sports. My baby Huskers ranked number 15 for eyeballs in 2023 ahead of Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Clemson, and Florida. Well, look, I can't deny that. As much as I'm a K-State fan. When I was growing up at the height of Nebraska I was like 5, 6, 7 years old when Nebraska was at the peak of their power. And then K-State was coming into its own, and Bill Snyder, where they won 11 games, 6 out of 7 years. And that rivalry was like the rivalry for me at the time. I'm not a guy that particularly likes Nebraska, but yeah, they definitely have some brand power. So it does not surprise me to see that they would be that high up. Some of that too, keep in mind, I will, in fairness to like Oklahoma there, Oklahoma is not always playing in as advantageous of like windows and on networks that are as advantageous as what the Big Ten TV contract would be. You'd have to go back and do a little bit of comparison there to make sure that fits. So many like Nebraska. Again, David, no offense, but how many times have I watched Nebraska lose by 40 to Michigan? Well, I haven't watched it, but it's on ABC. Like, it's an ABC game, and I'm watching something else because I'm not trying to watch Nebraska lose by 28 to Michigan. But it gets that time slot because they're playing Michigan. So there's some of that's been an advantage, and that's a part of why Oklahoma's like, hey, we're out. No more of this 11 a.m. kickoff crap in the Big 12. But Nebraska definitely has some brand power. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. And David follows up, sticking up for Lil Red and supporting your channel. Saw an antitrust thing in the comments. Love the show. Oh, thank you, David. Much appreciate you. We can definitely agree to disagree on some of this stuff. And look, people, Nebraska fans, the rest of us Big 12 fans, like, we can all get along. We can all get along, be respectful. Appreciate you being able to do that, David. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here to support the show and support the channel, man. And hey, we're getting our shots in now because, Matt Rule, I do respect Matt Rule as a coach. Probably going to get better than where it's been, for sure. How much better, up for debate, but it does seem like Nebraska is probably going to be moving in the right direction here. So we got to get him in while we can. Got to get him in while we can, because the Nebraska brand power will still preserve the opportunity for them to get it right. But David is not worried about the antitrust. I know that is definitely something that has been thrown out there a lot. And it's something that I just have a hard time weighing in on that, because I'm not a legal guy. I don't know how like a legal case would go with that. I have no real basis for that at all. So I just know that it's something that people that are legitimately qualified, like very good college football reporters will mention that. Like, people smarter than me will mention that as something that would be a concern for the bigger leagues, that antitrust could come into play. So that's what I operate off of, just that it seems to be something that could be an obstacle to the Big Ten and the SEC breaking off. I have no idea, none, how that would actually hold up in court, or what what kind of chance there would be for that to hold up in court. I would not pretend to really know that for you. Okay, we're going to start to get into a little bit more of the finances of this league, of the Super League. And if you want to weigh in, by the way, click the $ below the chat box. You can attach a donation to your chat, make it a super chat. It will ensure that you get on the show tonight. Like the video. If you're in here now, we've added quite a few people, up at about 250. If you could like the video, I would really appreciate that. And leave a comment in the comment section of the video. Are you buying that the Super League would have any chance of actually working out? So universities would own a percentage of the league. That's a model derived from MLS, where it was devised by former league president Mark Abbott, who is involved with this group, College Sports Tomorrow. Unlike the soccer league, the revenue distribution would not be an even split among all competitors, as top brands like Alabama and Notre Dame would receive more of the financial pie. So to all the college football communism concerns from earlier, the money quite literally would not be distributed equally. Alabama and Notre Dame, schools like that, would get more of the money than others, than your Boston colleges of the world. I'm really picking on Boston College today. I'm sorry. College Sports Tomorrow believes there would be added value in negotiating TV deals as one entity and creating broadcast windows that make more sense, much like the NFL's approach. And there might be something to that. Now, we already read in the articles that some of the pushback was people being like, hey, it's naive to think that there's more juice out there for the squeeze that you could give in college athletics and TV right now. There's just not money in the TV space right now that would really make sense for anybody to try and do that. But College Sports Tomorrow thinks that if you did this, you had all the big brands together in one property that could be bid on and perhaps chunk it out to different networks, I'm sure is how that would go, like the NFL, where you've got multiple networks televising the games. You know, you got somebody doing your Thursday night game. You've got somebody doing one league. You've got, Fox doing 3 of the leagues, ESPN doing 3 of the others. You could split it all up. We talked about with the college football playoff TV contract, that was a thought that they might break it up instead of going all ESPN, and that could be a way to make more money. There probably is something to that, especially if you then have control over, as one entity, all of the games, and instead of one network getting to cherry pick from a couple of games, and you might get unlucky and have one game that turns out awesome being in a weird time slot. No, if you just have control over all of it, you can do the mixing and matching much easier and put things more strategically in the best possible spots. Maybe flex some things like the NFL does, like have more ability to do that, because you would control everything. You would control all of that. And you're not dealing with individual conferences with their individual contracts with the TV networks. I don't know that would 100% be able to actually get you more money out there. I kind of doubt it, but there is some value to that. And that has to be worth at least something to the TV networks, that is something that you could do. Well, the College Sports Tomorrow model would eliminate the long-time conference structure for football. It would create one entity to negotiate with a prospective union that would represent the players on NIL, transfer portal, and salary structure rules. This embrace of collective bargaining could allow it to avoid the antitrust issues that have limited the NCAA's ability to enforce its own rules. I mean, this is a huge part of this now. Like, everybody is so scared about the House lawsuit. Everybody is so scared about all the wide range of different lawsuits that are out there right now that could be liabilities here. We heard about it a lot in the Pac-12 with Oregon State and Washington State. And it's a big part of why you're getting $5 million withheld from the 10 outgoing members this year, because they want to have money to deal with whatever the penalties are going to be that come from these lawsuits. And you don't want more lawsuits moving forward. So if you do something like this, you can it's much more streamlined and easy. It's so much less convoluted. If you can just, one entity, players, get your players association together, come meet at the table with us. We'll grind it out. And how many people in here have complained? I mean, raise your hand right now by your computer if you've complained about, man, it's just too wild with the transfer portal and NIL right now, because there's unlimited transfers. We're going to have this wild spring window in college football that everybody is talking about, where you will have players just up and leave after spring because they can. And guys already know in the back of their mind, well, that guy's not going to be here and I'm going to backfill him with X from Y school. Like, that's crazy. You could at least here have a contract. Here's the money we're going to pay you. This is the contract. You stay for a year, you stay for 2 years, whatever. And then it would work like actual professional sports, where there are contracts. Like, it's not just a complete and total free for all. They would have the flexibility to, have more leave and stuff, but it would be through like actual contracts. It would give the schools a little bit more stability too, and the entire sport some more stability at a time where it just really desperately needs it based on everything that is happening right now. So again, that to me is another inarguable point on all of this as to why this, in a lot of ways, would be just objectively better for the sport. Very much. Very much. I think it would be objectively better for the sport on that angle to be able to work it that way. According to 2 executives briefed on the proposal, one reason the FBS commissioners last month self-imposed a March 15th deadline to approve the 6-year college football playoff extension was to stave off college sports tomorrow's push. So the FBS commissioners were like, man, we got to get this ironed out before college sports tomorrow gets too much momentum, I guess is the way that I read that. College sports tomorrow was really trying to push, and they're like, look, if we don't get this signed and we got to go back to the drawing board on this thing, and it feels like, well, everything we've worked for is kind of out of the window and all bets are off as to what's going to happen next, which my thought at the time and most people's thought at the time was like, just get this done, because you don't want it to be, well, the Big Ten and the SEC are just going to say, well, whatever, we'll do our Super League right now. They didn't want college sports tomorrow coming in and being like, well, look, what better time for us to push a proposal like this, because you're kind of in disarray. Nobody can agree on the playoff. Didn't actually get that done. You're losing your TV deal with ESPN. Why don't we look into this? So that apparently was a part of the self-imposed March 15th deadline. During the Athletics reporting, executives involved in college football were inquiring, what do you know about the Perna Rolap group? So those are a couple names of guys that have been involved here. The Athletic was getting asked by executives involved in college football, what do you know about this group? What do you know about this College Sports Tomorrow group? What do you know about where all of this is going? So it does at least tell you that, well, they may not be taking the meetings, and well, it does seem like it's a super long shot that a Sankey or a Petiti would ever give in to something like this and sign off on this and acquiesce some of their overwhelming power. It's on the radar. Like, this is not back to the beginning of the show when I said this is not some guy with a Twitter account and 10 followers and has designed up a map of like, well, wouldn't this be awesome if this is how the sport was? Like, this has some legitimate people behind it, and it's at least enough in college football executives' minds to be quizzical about it and asking around about it and like wondering like, hey, what is happening with this thing? It's got more bite to it than you might expect. And it certainly caught me off guard when I saw the story put out there on social media. It had more bite to it than I expected. Well, critics in media and college sports who have heard about college sports tomorrow have warned of private equity's involvement. Perna, who's one of the guys involved here, Perna insisted this is not a money-making venture for individuals in his group. He said college sports tomorrow raised initial money to pay for fees incurred, but declined to say how much. The plan is for the new format to create more revenue on the premise that there is more TV money to be generated in a model comparable to the NFL's TV setup. So their pitch, and this part I will admit to you that I would be skeptical of, like I said a second ago, but their pitch is there will be more overall money here. We'll still slant it toward the big brands. We can get more money out of TV, still tilt it so the big boys feel like they've got their advantage, but overall this will be a healthier thing for the sport at large. That's the idea. I guess that's really more the elevator pitch part of this. You know, private equity that's a scary term. People worry about that and what it would do for the sport. And I understand that. I can completely understand why that could be a little bit worrisome. And you do have to put some level of trust in here that that's not going to wind up destroying it. But it just, to me, it feels a little bit like we're just already on a path for destruction. Probably more than a little bit. It feels a lot of it like we're on a path for destruction. We're on a path for something that's really going to tear the sport apart. it's a risk that I would be willing to take. As somebody certainly in the position of being a Big 12 fan, it's a risk that I would be willing to take. One top college football administrator claimed College Sports Tomorrow is trying to buy college football. Quote, buy college football. College Sports Tomorrow countered that it is only trying to create a system for football that in turn would result in the finances needed for non-revenue generating sports to survive and thrive. Under the plans, the non-football sports would stay in their current conference structure. Another thing that's been mentioned many times by people that would seem to be smart and something that needs to happen is like football, just break off and do your own thing and let everybody else worry about what they're doing. You know, all the complaints about the travel from Piscataway to LA on a Tuesday night for a volleyball game, like that kind of stuff. You could just have football do its own thing, make more money, produce enough money to fund whatever else is going on in the athletic department. And there's a lot of talk now with, you know, if you're going to have to be paying these lawsuits, if you're going to have to be paying the athletes directly, what's going to happen to a bunch of sports get cut? Will you be able to support those? I think the argument here would be like, well, if you're making more money, there is actual more money in the TV contracts here and you make more money, you could stave off a little bit of that. Here's an actual quote from somebody involved in College Sports Tomorrow. Athletes need to be paid and are going to be paid. Most of the rules against paying athletes, including some of those that are still in place, are likely to fall in the courts. We're going to need to sustain women's sports, Olympic sports, and we're going to have competitive equity and some methods to have a labor structure that is sensible. For all that, I think you need a more centralized national college league. So that's a part. That's a part of their pitch. A part of their pitch is that this will help the non-revenue sports. This is a plan to help the non-revenue sports, help you avoid some of the lawsuits and manage the really messy side of this right now, which is the NIL and the lawsuits that are going on. They make a pretty damn good case. I don't know. If you guys obviously been able to tell if you've been watching it this whole time, but I'm pretty bought in on this, man. They do seem to be making really good points about patching up a lot of the areas. This is pretty well thought out. A lot of the areas that college sports is struggling in right now. I'll just go ahead and throw this out right now. Brett Yormark stuff probably going to get tabled to a separate video this week, but this is like your 3 to 5 minute warning. So it's buzzer beater time. If you have a buzzer beater that you want to get in, click the $ below the chat box. In order to do that, attach a donation to your chat. We'll pin it in a separate column. Please like the video. If you could like the video, I would much appreciate that. And let me know in the comment section of the video another free way to support the channel, even if you just leave a comment that says comment, or you leave me a comment that tells me that I'm an idiot because the Super League has no chance, whatever it might be. Let me know about it in the comments as well. And if you are catching this after the fact, you're not watching it live, it is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you want to leave a question or comment there, I will read it on the next show, so you can be a part of the show as well. So Rolap, what was this guy's first name? Rolap's involvement in College Sports Tomorrow has raised eyebrows. He was the mastermind of the NFL's current $110 billion in TV deals and has been sought for top college commissioner jobs. All right, let's find. This guy seems important. Let's find his name. Brian Rolap. Oh, his LinkedIn pops right up. So I guess I could go, try to link up with this guy. Maybe I can get a job with him. Brian Rolap, would you hire me? He was the mastermind of the NFL's current $110 billion in TV deals and has been sought for top college commissioner jobs. While it is in the best interest of the NFL to have its feeder system of college football be strong, executives briefed on Rolap's role insist the league is not involved. Rolap declined to comment. That's a pretty heavy hitter to have in there. Like, this is the guy that figured out TV for the NFL. Now, the NFL is a pretty easy sell to TV because, I mean, the one thing that people will sit down and watch commercials for and not fast forward through them now or have them skipped entirely is live sports, and NFL is king. That's the live sport that everybody wants to watch. It is a pretty easy sell, but it sure seems like he's been able to maximize that, and it seems like a lot of people have seen that. I like the fact that a guy like this is throwing his weight behind it. Again, this is a pretty legitimate thing. It's a pretty legitimate, well thought out thing. College Sports Tomorrow's leaders maintain their intentions are pure and that they are in a hurry to get going. An avalanche of legal activity could dramatically increase the likelihood that their plan or something like it could take hold. Even prior to that day of potential foundational change, College Sports Tomorrow wants to lead from the front, not behind. Okay, boy, I feel that leaves me with a little bit of optimism in the last paragraph, huh? An avalanche of legal activity. The House lawsuit, the multiple other lawsuits that are going on involving athletes not being able to be paid, athletes being employees. You know, we've seen the unionization efforts, Dartmouth men's basketball team. If all of those start to go the way that it appears they're trying to, or that they are going right now or headed, there you have it. That could be some real momentum in the way of forcing this sort of change. If they look around and they're like, God, we are going to have to basically just get together and be able to negotiate with these guys. And maybe that's the in for everything else to take hold. And maybe that is how a Petiti or a Sankey would eventually have to give into this. Still not counting on it, but that's at least something to give you a little bit of optimism, to leave you with a little bit of optimism at the end of the story about the College Football Super League. I'm wildly fascinated by this. I'm happy that someone's trying to do something and that we're not just going to, let the sport completely die without attempting something. So I at least appreciate that little piece of it. But great stuff, man. Great stuff from The Athletic. Stuart Mandel, Andrew Marchand, have to give them a lot of credit for that. All right, we're going to talk to Matthew before we get out of here. Appreciate you, Matthew. Thank you for your support of the channel, and thank you for being here tonight. Matthew says, what are your thoughts on the Royals-Chiefs stadium tax vote, rejection, and relocation potential? Whoo boy, yeah, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw a lot of that. I do live in Kansas City. I live in the Kansas City metro area. I moved out of Jackson County, which got to vote in November. So I just missed by a couple of months being able to vote on this thing. I would have voted yes, but it's complicated. I mean, the Royals were a mess in all of this. The messaging was a mess. They changed plans a bunch of times. This was never very well organized at all. They have no one to blame but themselves for this not passing. The Chiefs didn't help at all. I know the Chiefs just threw out like hey, we're going to take $800 million and do like 5 to 10 things that, they have this rendering of like, what is it? And you're like, this looks the exact same. Like there was not much that was changed. I don't know. It makes me almost wonder if the Chiefs like kind of wanted that and just be able to go to Kansas now. But you run the risk if you say no to them, and I understand everybody saying, hey, the billionaires should pay for their own stuff. Like, I understand that sentiment wholeheartedly. I get it. But you got to understand the reality. The reality is if you don't pay for it, somebody will. And you're now at least inviting the possibility that one of the teams could leave. Now, I seriously don't think the Chiefs would ever leave. I think the Royals would be a bigger threat. I still doubt that they do. But you've invited that as a possibility, and I didn't want that to be a possibility. Kansas City has changed dramatically since I graduated high school in 2007 from the Kansas City area. Like, downtown was nothing. It's now great. There's a lot that's happening here in the city. I don't want to move backwards, and this does give me the fear that things can backslide a little bit. And I just would never want to invite that risk. I think I would not want to be calling the bluff of these guys because there are going to be cities that would be desperate to get, if they had the chance to get a Major League Baseball team, would crawl on hands and knees to do it. And by that, I mean, they would subsidize a ton of this. They would be paying for a lot of it so they could get a better deal. And I just don't want to play that game of chicken. So I think a lot of it is pretty short-sighted because even the people that don't care that much about the Chiefs or Royals, like Kansas City, could very quickly become much more like a Tulsa or a Des Moines or an Omaha. And no offense to those cities, but they could very quickly become much more like that than what it is right now, which is a city that's been on the come up big time if one of the teams were to leave. So I just be careful what you wish for on all of that. So I was disappointed, but I'm disappointed all the way around. I mean, I'm disappointed the way the vote went. I'm also disappointed in the campaign that the Royals ran and the Chiefs' contribution to it as well. They did not do a good job at all. Nobody could ever possibly say that. So that's in a nutshell. My thoughts, Matthew. Appreciate you asking. It's, been a pretty contentious issue around Kansas City here. Houston Cougars, Germany. What's up? Houston Cougars, Germany. Thank you for the support, man. Love to see it. Great job, Johan. Go John Kurtz. Go Cougs. Go Big 12. Great vibes, Houston Cougars, Germany. Always bringing the vibes here. No Houston and Kansas basketball game in Mexico next year. Big 12 is postponing the Mexico efforts. That is also something that has happened since I last spoke to you. So thank you for reminding me of that, Houston Cougars, Germany. We'll get that little bit of news out there, which is interesting because I know, like, it seemed like they had been really pushing that at the Big 12 tournament. Must have changed pretty quickly there. But yeah, anyway, thank you for the vibes, Houston Cougars, Germany. I say go Houston Cougars, Germany. Go Cougs, go Big 12. We'll flip it around to you. Thank you, Houston Cougars, Germany. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Again, shout out to 365 Sports for the interview that they did with Brett Yormark that I do want to get some thoughts on in a video this week, which will happen at some time. And I'm going to give you that link once again. There's the link if you want to watch Brett Yormark on 365 Sports. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't work the way that I want it to. Maybe you can't actually copy the link in there. Whatever. Go to 365 Sports on YouTube and check out the Brett Yormark interview if you haven't. It was wonderful, fantastic stuff. So a lot of people making great content in this space, and appreciate all of them. I mentioned Greg Flugar has a really good update on what's going on with North Carolina State, and everything happening in that neck of the woods as well. And I'm supposed to get excited. I have an interview as of right now lined up for Friday with somebody who's been covering a lot of the ACC part of this. So that's another thing I should be dropping here on the channel, assuming all goes well pretty soon. So lots of good stuff headed your way. If you could like the video on your way out the door, I would appreciate that. If you could leave a comment in the comment section, let me know how it is that you feel like this Super League would work. That stuff all stokes the algorithm for me and is a free way to support the channel if you can do that. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to leave a question or comment there with your donation, and I will get to it on the next show. If you weren't able to be with us live tonight, want to keep you guys all involved as well. And tell your friends, word of mouth, social media, Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever it is that you're at on social media. Let other people know about the channel, and let's continue to grow it. Love the community that we have here, but would always love to welcome others into it as well. So with that, I bid you adieu. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night and have a great rest of your week. I will talk to you all soon.